Welcome to a demonstration video by ReEngine Consulting. My name is David Johnson, the Director of Operations. This is Alfredo Maikiu, the Director of Strategy.
So when folks in business and government encounter challenging issues in the workplace, there's a tool that they can turn to help them create a strategy to overcome those obstacles to achieve their goal. It's called the interference diagram, and this is how it works. All right, everybody, thank you for coming so that we can talk today about the goal of this organization and some of the challenges that we're currently experiencing. It's really just a simple 5-step process that we're going to go through today. So we're already here as a group. Thank you, everybody. We're going to put the goal on the board, right in the middle of a circle, and we're going to identify obstacles to that goal and identify some of the challenges and put it on the board as well. Then we're going to brainstorm after we've had a chance to reflect on some of the interferences, obstacles, and challenges that we might have. We're going to reflect on those and see if we can't come up with some solutions ourselves. And everybody, I think, has a stickum that we have for that part. And then finally, we're going to try to decide at least some initial steps of what we're going to do to identify and start working on some of these challenges as a team. Okay? Great. So well, let's start with a little bit about our organization. So, you know, we're the Open Records Department, and our job is to entertain requests from all kinds of folks and organizations to gain and provide information that we might be having, but the FBI or the Attorney General or other organizations, or the citizens themselves might need themselves for some sort of legal action that they may be doing, and they need these actual records so that they can do that for themselves. So there's sometimes it's the media that asks these questions that need to be evaluated, and not just because somebody asked for a record doesn't mean it should be released. There are things that we have to, medical considerations in terms of HIPAA expectations. There's educational records, that's often known as FERPA. There's PII, the personal identifiable information that folks have, like their social security number, that need to be taken out of some of these requests. And there are certain things that the agencies that we work with and our own organization sees as confidential in order to be able to do our mission, and things need to be safeguarded. I know that there's a few attorneys within the room here, and you all know the importance of attorney-client privilege. And that is within the organization as well. So as you all know, I'm telling you, but you already know, the task that we have is not something that's easy or that should be rushed. It should be a good decision with the interest of our organization and the requester in mind, and also the legal statutes that are attendant and the rules to the department. But we've had some challenges. We've had some backlog. We have about 227 of those requests within that we have in the system so far, and we know that we're only processing about 72, and every week we're getting 109. We know that every week we're not touching about 275 of those requests, not even addressing them, right? Not even touching those. And so what that's resulted in is a significant delay in terms of time. And we know that we want to answer, anytime that we can answer an open records request in 10 days, if we can possibly do so. If there are payment involved or other complexities involved, we want to do it as soon thereafter as we can. But when things start to take 30 and 40 days to do a routine request, the backlog is starting to affect our process. And that's why we're all here together to try to address that. So that's a long description of our mission and what we need to do. What's a brief one?
Well, we need to process open records requests, and I think the 3 things that capture it best are quickly, accurately, and completely.
Great. So there's our goal for the organization. Right? There's our goal. And we know that there are some very good reasons why, on a routine basis, we are not achieving that on a daily basis. And so let's just be honest here with ourselves and put up what you know is a challenge to doing that on a daily basis. Who's got the first interference that they want to bring out? Albert?
Yeah, being honest, burnout, exhaustion. Compounding all of that is when staff are out of the office, their work comes to the rest of us.
Oh, yeah.
And that contributes to the backlog, contributes to the lack of processing. So it's a big part of the problem.
So when there's missing staff, either when they're out for a short period of time, or when we have a vacancy that we haven't filled, that work, which needs to get done, gets redistributed to the rest of the team. Mm-hmm. And they're getting tired.
And they're getting tired, and it just keeps piling. The work keeps piling.
Yeah. Right? And we've seen that happen, right? So every week we're getting 37 that we can't even touch. And it's just going back on the pile right there. And in part, that's the reason.
Yeah, that's part of it.
That's part of it anyway. Okay, great. What's another one?
Every other request is an emergency. So all we do is stop working on one emergency to start a new one.
Okay.
And we never finish anything because we're always halfway through something.
Right, and then so what does that cause? What's just because something is an emergency, how does that affect the organization, Chris?
It disrupts the flow, so everybody has to stop what they're doing.
Aha, okay, right.
And then before they get to finish it, they get another emergency, so they stop that one.
so they're jumping from task to task,
right.
And then back to a task, and they're not finishing them.
Right.
Okay, all right, excellent point. Marlon?
Lack of formal process.
Lack of formal process.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. And that's also pronounced because those different categories that I talked about, right? Like HIPAA, and FERPA, and PII, and those that have to do with rehabilitation, and those that have to do with unemployment, they're different processes.
Yeah.
And so the fact that we don't have it is even more confusing because it's not like we just have one process. We've got multiple processes, and all of them are lacking a formality that's there. Okay. All right, excellent. Okay.
I think also for open records requests, there are very strict deadlines in the law. I think like a lack of understanding by the agency on why we have to get these things on time.
Right. Okay. So you're saying that there needs to be conveyed a sense of urgency
Yes.
within the organization because if we're awesome just in this room, we still won't get our open records requests done because we need the teamwork of those other divisions and departments within the organization.
Well, I feel like I wasn't trained properly enough.
Not trained properly. Okay, exactly. Okay, and we'll get back to that in a second. So this one is a lack of sense of urgency throughout the enterprise. Okay,
Urgency and an understanding. Yeah.
Yeah.
lack of understanding of open records urgency
And legal requirements.
and what?
Legal requirements.
And legal requirements.
You could also summarize that by saying they're not giving us the documentation, the departments aren't giving us the documentation
Okay.
in
Yeah,
time.
I think
Right.
that's a reason why.
So documents that we need to fulfill our job are not provided timely. Now let's take another look at this question of training. Ron, can you explain that a little bit? What do you mean by training and how does it affect you?
Well, in order for me to do my job correctly, I have to know, like she was saying, I need to understand the urgency behind it or the laws and regulations behind it. And I feel like I'm not adequately prepared.
Aha, so part of this would be training down here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Also, when I'm interrupted and I'm given a different task, I may not be qualified for that task. I'm good on taxes. I'm good on
Okay. So
Yeah.
this causes, so when people are gone,
Yeah.
you're not trained to do those particular things. Like, for example, are you trained on how to handle media requests?
No.
You're not, but you're getting them,
I'm
aren't you?
getting them.
But you're getting them, okay? So here, lack of training, right? And to me, that also ties also over here with this other one here in purple too, right? So the lack of formal processes also relates to the lack of training that we have too, right? If we had formal processes, then it would be easy for us to train them, and we wouldn't have to rely on subject matter experts that are going to be gone and retired in 30 days, right? And they're going to leave the organization, which is this one.
Or leave because of burnout.
Or leave because of burnout. And we know one or two folks that might have done that recently too.
No, I don't know.
I think the reason why we're seeing that today is because we have 3 vacancies, right?
There's just too much. There's more than we can do.
I think in terms of every day, about 3 times a week, our fax machines and our printers break down. It's pretty ridiculous.
And how does that affect work?
Well, we can't do anything because we have to print requests, and without the printer working, we can't even get anything from the fax machine. We can't print any new requests out. So.
Wow. Okay, so let's write that down.
And what happens with that is that when that happens, all of us stop doing like requests, and we start working on administrative, like keying in things into the system rather than actually.
Which causes task switch, right? And that's not necessarily your priorities. Your priorities are open records requests, but you find something to do. And so you jump to tasks, right? So you go from core tasks, right, to admin tasks. And then you have to jump back to core tasks when the printers come back up. And then that probably puts you behind. Does it put you behind?
And you know, even when the printers are working, they're so outdated
Oh,
that it will only allow for a certain amount of documents to be scanned and emailed before it shuts down again. So it's tricky that way.
yeah, old, outdated equipment. And I'm just gonna guess because I saw the movie Office Space. But is it jam too?
And it's also difficult to keep track of the status of when you have so many requests coming in. I just find that often that I know that there are time constraints and it's just difficult to keep track of the statuses.
The volume is overwhelming, right? And causing confusion and tracking problems. Right? Because then you're asking the question, you're not asking the question, should I disclose this? You're asking the question, where is that in the process? Who's got that? And that's not your essential core function, right? Your essential core function is, should this be disclosed? But when you can't track it and you've got 100+ cases that you're trying to figure out, the requests that you're trying to figure out, you're losing track. So we need to keep the volume per individual at a certain level. And maybe there's a sort of choking that needs to be done so that each person, before your brain starts to explode with the number, your gray matter starts to explode with the number of cases and reviews that you have, maybe there's a good spot that you could have. Okay, all right, excellent.
Communication.
Okay, what's going on with communication?
You know, Jonathan's going to be out, and I didn't know he's going to be out, and they just dropped his workload on me. I would have liked to know that before, so I could, you know.
Okay, so adjustments, right? Team communication, team workload distribution, right? And that also ties back to an opportunity to do the prioritization as well. When things get disrupted and workload gets shifted around, there needs to be more communication to be able to support that.
Well, sometimes I feel like I don't know what my other teammates are working on.
Okay, right. So maybe there's a lack of awareness of office activities.
And that will tie back into where we are in the process on a certain claim.
Okay, right. Which then feeds positively back to this way. Okay, excellent. All right.
Regarding the vacancies, we actually haven't had leadership in a while. It's been a few months and we only just hired. a new lead.
Which exacerbated some of these things, especially probably contributing to point of communication. All right, good.
Related to the urgency, we can't go to another division and tell them what's their priority. So we get judged on something we can't control. All we can do is send them the request. But I can't tell them to stop what they're doing because I need this request.
Okay, so other maybe internal customers is the right word, and they're not held accountable. And then the other phenomenon that I saw is that they let them stack up, and then they dump them on us, right? All at one time, right? You all experiencing that? As opposed to when they finish it, send it to us. When they finish it, send it to it. So what they're doing is they are batching instead of flowing the documents to you. And then probably on the bottom of that stack is the oldest one that probably somebody's angry about, which then causes a sense of urgency on there. It probably came to you late because it was somebody else's, but they left the office or they went on vacation or they retired, and now it's gone that way. And since you're not trained to be able to handle it, you all feeling the pressure and how they contribute to each other? Okay?
Well, that ties back into the lack of formal process. They don't understand that they are part of our process.
Part of the process.
They are part
So a larger understanding of the stakeholders in terms of the process, right? So a lack of education actually part of the solution, and it's not just us. That the ownership for these numbers and the fact that 37 is going into the pile of that which we can't do is not exclusively the ownership of this office, but success involves the activities, the behavior, and the processes of those other internal customers that we support. Okay?
Well, we also have external customers that call and want to know the status of their request. Yeah, I mean, and when it's backed up, we just get more of those requests.
And if those external customers are powerful, they're going to use their power, and that causes, again, more disruption. Okay, so let's see. I'm trying to do X, and you won't provide me with the documents. The court date is moving up, and you won't provide me with the documents. I need to release this information, and I got a big hole in it because I don't know what our organization needs to provide, what the piece that we haven't provided. Okay? All right, good. So let's pause for a moment and just sort of reflect on this, looking at the different challenges that we have. So you have some weight on the organization caused by the vacancies. The lack of formal processes are causing challenges, and we have a lot of different processes because all the requests are different. Not that they're not in categories, because they are, but they each have to be independently evaluated, and we have to be trained on those categories to be able to do so, and the training currently is lacking. The volume is overwhelming, causing confusion. External stakeholders are disrupting us. We also have the equipment fail, which certainly doesn't help in this process when you have to stop your work midstream, actually when you're actually pretty close to fulfilling the request if you're at the printing stage of it, and you have to stop that, and then you have to go back and work on something else and then return back to that task later on, really multitasking ourselves in that regard. Okay, so let's go a little bit and think a little bit of these. And what I would like everybody to do is just brainstorm, and then on one piece of paper, I want you to just write anything, doesn't matter, anything that might in any way contribute positively to any one of these. Brainstorm solutions and write them down. And then when it comes time to that, we'll actually post those on the board. Because your stickers are like the solution to the challenge. Okay, so let's take a look at these. We've got some ideas now on plate. So what I'd like to do is for you to go ahead and raise up your idea, read it aloud, and then pass it to me and tell me where it goes.
We have to start with developing clear processes.
Okay. All right. And we don't need to wait for anybody to do that,
No.
right? We know our process. We can write it down. We can take that. One of us can take one type. Another person can take another type, and subject matter expertise. So that when somebody leaves the office, they don't take all that with them.
Right.
We have it written down. Okay, great.
Related to that, develop prioritization guidelines. Have one set of rules on what's a priority.
Okay, absolutely.
I have an obvious one.
Okay, bring it.
We just need to hire.
We need to hire. Thank you. Right, are our postings up? Did we get them adequately? Did we do the recruiting? Have we established liaison with HR? Are we being responsive to HR? Who's there? Especially if we're missing a manager, maybe we just need to draw straws and figure out like who does that work to be able to hire. Otherwise, we're going to continue to suffer more and more as a team. All right, great.
Need to find out why the fax is malfunctioning. People might not be loading it properly, or
Is there a training issue with that? Is it truly the old equipment that's out there? Oh, is anybody collecting that information? How many times it breaks, right? So that we're collecting that data, because the IT person that it rolls to is probably a team of like 20 people, right? And he's like, okay, well, I'll fix it again. And then it's the other person that comes back the next Tuesday and fixes that again, and they're not connecting the dots. So if we don't connect the dots, and we don't do that analysis, they're just going to keep on repairing that little bitty part, even though the whole piece of equipment, to Francis's point, needs to be replaced. Okay?
Yeah.
Good. Go ahead. Mark.
Inputs.
Inputs. Where do you want it?
Inputs to the claims. Does it even qualify for Open Record Request Act before it gets into the pipeline?
Oh. So
We
you're
can
saying
eliminate-
that, well, you got a new one then.
Yeah.
You're saying we don't triage effectively.
Yeah, we might be able
Right.
to eliminate.
We need to triage, right? Need to triage. We might be finding way down in that process that it shouldn't be an open records request when we could have identified it earlier, put the decision in front of somebody early on there. All right, good.
Similar to that, our manager that says no to some customers that'll be like, you have to do this in 5 days. You need someone who says no.
Oh, you need somebody to hold the line and enforce the policies.
Right.
Do we have written policies for that? Have we communicated those written policies to our customers?
No,
Oh.
because we don't have any
Okay.
agency-wide training.
Right. All right. Okay. Good. So we need to, and maybe we need to write the policies first, right? And then we need to have this training that's here, require agency open records training that would go with the stakeholders right here to be able to do that. And the manager then, once the manager is armed with that and has that information and is able to track that and knows, because all customers are not responding poorly equally. Right? There are some managers that there are some external stakeholders or internal customers that are just laggards and that just need to be reminded. But they can't do that if we don't have a policy, if it's not effectively communicated to them. And then they can't do that if we don't have a manager that holds them accountable. Okay, good. What's the next one?
Lack of understanding of the urgency,
Okay.
that's for part of the training.
Okay, good. Something.
So I know that we process some requests that are not actually open records requests because we want to have good customer service, but maybe it's time we stop doing that because our volume is so high. Maybe we should just focus on actual open records requests and refer those other ones to the departments.
Okay, excellent. All right, great.
Not
go.
every request is an emergency, so not everything needs to be expedited because then that disrupts the flow.
Right.
So just don't allow requests to be expedited without good reason.
Okay, don't allow requests to be expedited without good reason, and certainly not without measuring those and providing that back. I don't think any manager or director in this organization wants to be the one that expedited more than any one of the brothers and sister managers across the organization. Nobody wants to be singled out like that. But if we don't communicate that, to Marlon's point, we don't have that level of communication and we don't measure that, they'll never know, and guess what? They're just going to keep on doing it. Right? Okay, good.
Tell requesters not to ask for a status until a certain date. They don't have to ask the next day what the status is.
Because we're getting beat up, right? The phone is ringing and ringing and ringing, and everybody wants to know the condition of their status. So they need to at least wait a certain amount of time before they start interrupting us, asking about statuses. Great.
And mine kind of builds on that. I'm like, is there some kind of tracking system we can put in place? Something online, you know? It's like, here it is, even if it's 3 simple
Status
steps.
report.
Yeah, status report. How do we make
Where they don't
visibility?
call.
Right.
Yeah.
Or maybe even just put up what our current mean is.
Yes.
Right? Because we've been under 10 days, folks. We've done it together as a team. It just so happens that we're pushing over 40 now. but we've been under 10 days, and so whatever it is, we can do that so that they know, have at least an expectation of where we are. Please.
How about shared resources?
What do you mean by that?
For internal stakeholders, a simple process might be, we need something out of a database, allow my department to have permission to access that information.
Right.
So I'm not waiting
Yes.
for you to finish your work.
Right.
Just give me that.
Yeah, so in other words, perhaps allow, like the other idea of getting a recommendation that we talked about with Becca and Jonathan, you add to that, let them do their own pull and let it come to us full kit. We'll do our job as disclosure officer, but we're not your research assistant. You do the research and then pass it to us so that all we have to do is look at the documentations and your recommendation. Excellent. Okay. Communication, where would you put it?
I put it over here by internal.
Internal. Yeah, there we go. Perfect. Okay, excellent. Who's got another burning one?
Me.
All right.
So I would really love it if I only had 20 requests on my plate at a time. I feel like I would be able to stay on top of it and process them much faster
Right.
if I only had a certain amount.
Also related to burnout, we wouldn't burn out.
And we wouldn't burn out, right? Yeah, exactly. So maybe here, is this where it goes, Jonathan, or elsewhere?
I think
Volume is overwhelming?
Yeah, I think it could go to that one as well.
Right, and it could go here as well too.
Uh-huh.
Okay, let's burn out.
Well, to tie into that, how about a communication plan?
Communication plan, right? What kind of things do we expect to communicate? What do we need to communicate to our internal customers? What do we need to communicate to our external customers? And make that part of our weekly rhythm.
I feel like mine kind of ties into that too. Like who's taking all these phone calls? You know, I think instead of our workflow being interrupted by having to speak to somebody on the phone,
Yes.
there needs to be one person in charge of managing and delegating these calls and sharing this information.
Yeah, love it. Okay, good. All right, so, John, please.
One last burning one.
Okay.
So I know that I process a lot of different types of requests each day, and I have a hard time remembering like what I need for each type.
Right.
What if we
Your point.
What if we came up with sort of a standard checklist for the major types? So
Yeah.
although I know it, it would be nice to have a checklist to like remind myself quickly.
Okay.
So,
And then, this one, to Marlon's point here, maybe the checklist is tied in to the processes so that they're there. And then maybe also we can use those at some point. I'm sure that we do some level of quality control, right? And analyze what we release, what we don't release. If we don't do quality control, we might be getting that from other sources. So we take that and use the checklist as a source for that as well, right? So that we have those formal processes. And it's very easy for us to know that the right checks and the right thought was done in each one of these, especially when we're working with so many areas that have to do with medical, that have to do with educational, that have to do with personal, and have to do with confidentiality for the organization. That's a good way to make sure that we're thinking about the right things.
And so that ties into external checklists. So we get the information completed,
Yeah,
right? So we don't have to go back.
it's full kit.
Yeah.
Can you write down full kit? That's an excellent one. Okay, excellent. All right. We probably could come up with more. Right? Are you feeling it? Right? We're all thinking about how to positively affect our organization here. And it was almost like, 10 minutes ago, it was like a low point. It was like, look at all of those things that are weighting our organizations down. And now we have almost like a sense of optimism now because we're looking at all the potential solutions to go through. And we can't go through every process all the time. We don't have time to be able to try to do everything all at the same time. But let's look at, and let me maybe put an asterisk on those. Let's just choose 3 things right now. Let's choose 3 things that we think we can start doing now that don't depend on bosses, that don't depend on external factors, that we have within our span of control or influence to be able to work on and that matter. Because the ones that matter the most are the ones that are going to positively affect our environment the best, right? And they're going to have the best results. So what are they? Let's just choose 3.
I would nominate the first one, develop clear processes.
Develop clear processes.
Right there.
Okay?
We can work on that internally.
Excellent.
We can all contribute.
Okay, good.
We can also define full kit.
Okay, define full kit. Can I get a second? Everybody agree?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right.
Start communicating internally.
Start communicating internally.
When you get staff to buy in to the work activities and processes,
Yeah.
it starts looking better.
Asterisks. All right, and because we're on a roll, one more.
Higher.
All right, so here we are. We're resolved today to do these things, to do these, especially these 4 things that we're resolved to walk out of here and go to HR and find out how the postings are doing, get the stack of applications and start sorting through them, right? We're also resolved to develop clear processes, and we realize that no clear processes are going to come down like manna from heaven. They're right here in our subject matter knowledge. And it might take some research and work to do it, but we can develop those processes ourselves, right? Then we can effectively communicate them to ourselves, like Francis is arguing, right? That we can understand what our expectations are for ourselves, and we can make sure that when we're getting requests from externals or from internal folks in the organization, that they have a full understanding, their own checklist, if you will, of what it would mean to be full kit when they turn it into us. Because they're motivated at that point to get their legal review for that open records request done properly and early. And the better communication that we have and the more full kit we have, the more successful we're going to be. Does that sound good? Is there anybody in the room who believes that if we start working on those 4 things, that it won't start to positively affect our environment as it is right now? Right? It works, right? Even if we, and if we start moving in many of those directions to positively affect those negative effects that we're experiencing, those challenges, those obstacles that we have, then we're going to start moving our organization forward, and we're going to feel it on the bottom line in terms of backlog and time to be able to hit what the statute expectations in terms of time that our statute has, but more importantly, that our citizens have in terms of their open records request. All right, hey, great group, great participation. I look forward to listing these down, developing a strategy and a plan of action so that when we are able to accomplish these tasks that we list up here, that'll get us to the right conditions, the critical success factors that will ultimately lead us to our goal. Right? And our goal is to process open records requests quickly, accurately, and completely. And I think we're on path to do that. All right, thank you, everybody.